But generally speaking, if you see white buildings with blue shutters, it means something.
It means
Okay, it's not prison. The prison is behind me, but we'll see how it is linked with the prison in a certain way. The prison here belongs to the Ministry of Misrad HaBitachon, the Ministry of Defense. It is not part of the site; they're independent. So if you book a visit here, you should do it directly with them and not with the Akko site. Inside there are guided tours if you wish to have one. There's also a system, a whispers system that takes you along and explains to you in certain points. There are sensors, they sense where you are and they tell you the story. We're not going to spend too long in here, not because it's not important. It is an important story. It's part of the history of Akko, but because for most tourist groups, this site is not part of the itinerary. Because there are much more important sites. Crusaders, Templars, restaurant, fish restaurant, way more important than prisons, right? Sorry? Martyrs.
the market, the shoe.
Shopping, yes. Yeah, no, I understand the word. Yes. So yes, you're going to see that there's lots of competition on the short time that you have in Akko. Today, this is luxury. We do what's important and what's interesting, but that's not the way things are usually in real life. So we're now going into it, and remember the shutters, the blue shutters, which hopefully the gates will be open.
Getting out now. Yes, we are exactly.
الجسم المعلق طلع كيف صار يحطوا سيبريشن.
Have the whispers today. It means that if you're not next to me, you won't be able to hear. So try to stick to me, together with me, and listen carefully. So I don't want to stand too long in the sun, so just a quick remark on what we see here. We're going to be down there in a short while. I'm going to take you there, and we'll explore that, because this is, the arches that you see in the courtyard are from the Crusader period. Okay, it was exposed, it was revealed in the 1990s during the excavations, and now it's part of the tour. We're not going directly there, there's another path, I'll show you how we get there. Now, it is a good example of what happens in Akko in general. The Crusader level reaches up to here. I'm standing on the ceiling of the Crusader halls and rooms. Behind the arches there are halls. We're standing on them right now. Okay, so we're standing here, 1 meter below us, it's Crusader, 800 years back in time. Yet what we see here is a fortress, later used as a prison, and today a museum, but originally it was built by Daher el-Omar and Ahmad al-Jazar. So this is a great example showing us how the Ottoman, Turkish buildings from the 18th century lie directly on the Crusader ones. The Crusader ones were not destroyed, they were simply covered, filled up with earth, and then on top they built the next level.
What year it was excavated?
We will discuss this later, but let's go into the shade, the area over there, and we will Okay. Eiyal, Meiron. Yes, I can see it. Now we switch guide. Where's our guide? There he is. Here he is. So we have a nice guiding point. We have a nice guiding point here about the fortress and the prison. Many issues. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, welcome. It's been a long time since I guided to you guys, in the synagogue. Michal missed it, unfortunately. Anyway, we're going to get on with it. The introduction, and obviously we've got Eiyal with us today. He's going to be able to elaborate on a lot of stuff. I was supposed to give this tour's been cancelled 3 times, so I've had a lot of information. So I'm giving the tour. You know, when I was first supposed to talk about it, I was going to talk about a lot of stuff that we hadn't learned. We hadn't learned about the minorities. We hadn't learned about anything. Okay. So let's begin. I'm going to fast forward to Omar and Jazar and building the fortification and the fortress in the 18th century. Then Napoleon couldn't get in, had to leave. Then we know we've had the history from here, and I'm going to fast forward to a time and a year 1868. In 1868, a very important man was made a guest and was locked up in this prison. And his cell was right there. And this is who he is. Eiyal.
Yes. It was
Okay. He was locked up here with his family. Because of the foundations, and this courtyard was an open courtyard, there were pits that had fallen in the foundations. One of his sons died, but a lot of his followers had followed him, and those houses on the outside, I think pretty much that Eiyal had pointed out to us, were his followers, and they could see him from the window during the time of his imprisonment. He was locked up by the Ottomans. They saw this as a penal colony. You know, it's a funny year because who else arrived down the road to the south of us in that same year? The Templars. It's got nothing to do. Baola. The Bab was assassinated years before, and Baola was taken from Tehran to Damascus. He was locked up, and they felt that there was too much influence, so they wanted to lock him up here.
He means Muhammad al-Shirazi.
Yes.
Founder of the
Correct.
Baha'i.
Yes.
Yeah.
The original, the forerunner of the Bab, he was buried in the Baha Gardens.
I know.
No, it's what did you say the full name?
Yes. Baola was then released and passed away in his mansion here just north of us, in Akko, just north of us, in 1892. The British then took over the prison and used it as a prison. And one of the first famous people that were locked up during the riots in 1920 was a man by the name of Zev Jabotinsky. So he's the guy that dresses a lot like all of us, with a suit and a tie and white shoes. Now, notice something. These guys are in prison. This was a picture taken in prison. What do you notice about them?
Fancy. Fancy.
Maybe it was a wedding.
This is something that somehow we skirt over. We didn't go to Zev Jabotinsky's grave at Har Herzl. We didn't go, and I think sometimes him as a personality can be misinterpreted as this right-wing leader. He was, yes, the revisionist party. He believed in a truth. He believed in different borders, biblical borders of Israel. He stood, and a lot of the older generations used to say, if only we'd listened, if only we'd been more proud of who we were. He started a lot of youth groups in Europe. He knew what it meant to be a proud Jew. And it was all about honor, it was all about honor. Funny enough, he actually passed away just before the declaration, well, long before the declaration of the State of Israel, but inspecting the youth. He wanted people to dress well, he wanted people to be proud of themselves. He didn't feel he needed to be embarrassed who were. his feeling was being in your truth. His party was later taken over and it went to Igun and then later Likud through Menachem Begin. I'm now going to fast track us to a stage where during the different stages of the riots, there were then the riots in 1929. This picture was here in the prison. The boxing gloves are also a fashion statement, because it was in 1919 that Jack Dempsey became the world heavyweight champion in New York City. So it was that time. There was a belief, a self-confidence. We didn't get to Jabotinsky's kever, he didn't get to his grave at Herzl, but it is very close to Herzl's, he's interred very close. I'm just going to now fast forward to 1929. Riots start to happen, and there's quite a number of Arabs that are locked up here as well. Jelani, Jazi, there are a few names. I've got a whole list of names. I've done some research. It was quite difficult to find the research, but there were Arabs and Jews that were locked up separately in different areas. And
They're talking in the Islamic Akko.
Correct. So people were locked up, and people were also sent to the gallows. We're going to visit the gallows. We're going to see Jabotinsky's cell. We can see the entrance of Ba'olah's cell. We're not going to be able to go in because it's a very holy site. So there was a lot of people that were home. And now I'm getting to the main point of two main points of what I was going to talk about. There was Dresner, there were a lot of people being hung, and were called Olei Agadol. And the guys were almost, when they were on their way to be hung, there'd be a song that was sung where they were going up with pride. They were ascending to the gallows. So we know the word Aliyah. You've been in the shul when I gave the description. You're getting Aliyah, you're getting called up to the Torah. You're making Aliyah to Israel, you're coming up to the land. They felt they were going to the gallows and they were going up for their land. To the gallows. And they were going up to their land. They were ascending to the gallows.
So what does it mean, Oleh Adudom?
Oleh Adudom is ascending to the gallows.
The portal.
No,
What
that's
is
the
the meaning
period.
of the word gallows?
Gallows.
When you have
Okay,
it.
but it's important. Everybody understood it? The meaning of the word gallows is where you're going. It's where you're going to be hanged. Okay, so it's important. The meaning, these people were calling those who are ascending into the gallows. So it means that they're going through a spiritual phase, which is going upwards in order to be hanged. Okay, it's a way of.
And they would sing a song. And this song, you could hear everybody in the prison singing when everybody was going. And there is something that I've read, which I can show you at a later stage, where they talk about the Arabs joining in with the song. Because what happens when you've got two kids that are fighting with each other? What do? You send them away. What happens when they're away? They almost, unite against now. The English had locked them up, and now they had this common enemy. Who knows what went on at that time? There was a famous breakout where the soldiers broke. Good planned. There were a lot of people that were hung. There was Bazani and Farsin in Yerushalayim. There was that story. There was a lot going on, and the Gun planned a mission on the 4th of May. All this happened on the 16th of April and the 21st of April, where there were a lot of people hung. And they said, we need to get our guys out, the Edsel guys and the Gun guys. And they wanted to get them out of the prison. So what they did is they came in British painted vehicles. They pretended they were British. They had diversion tactics. They came in on a Sunday at 4:22. And they came into the southern entrance. We know that that's the south because the sea is there. The southern entrance, and they blew a hole through the old Turkish hammam. a Turkish bath because the wall was there. And inside was a man by the name of Eitan Levy. The guy that led the charge was a guy by the name of Dov Cohen. He was the commander of the Irgun. And they had smuggled explosives in because there was an inner gate. And he had blown the gate to be able to let the Jews. And a lot of Arabs and a lot of Jews were able to escape from that breakout. Winston Churchill actually commented that it was an amazing escape, an amazing thing that had happened. He wasn't in power at the time, Clement actually was already. But it was just the whole, the understanding, and Bagan even wrote a book called The Triumph of the Gallows, because of the pride and because of the resilience of people, and because people were in their own truth, and because they were proud of being who they were. It was an ethos that has been carried out, particularly within the Jewish underground, but also in an ethos that's been carried out in many people's truths, whether it is Baha'u'llah, whether it is Jabotinsky, the street number, whatever it is, we can carry our truths. We're on a journey. There are a lot of truths going around in our lives at the moment. But if we believe in our own truths, and we ask the question, am I doing the right thing? It's not always easy to answer, but if we continue with that, guys, it's been an honor and a privilege to have been with you guys for this year. We haven't been in prison, but I love you all and I wish you the best luck. My heart goes out there.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Why Jabotinsky was arrested here?
Jabotinsky. First of all, everybody knows who was Jabotinsky. You're supposed to know.
I think so.
Why he was arrested?
So he was arrested during the 1920 riots that started in Nebi Musa. During those 1920 riots, he made a group called Protectors of Jerusalem. And because he was willing to confront anybody that was attacking anybody in Jerusalem, and he was willing to defend, the British saw it as antagonistic, and they arrested him. He was originally supposed to be locked up for 15 years, but I think he only served a couple of months.
Yeah, if you give
A
few words about who was Jabotinsky.
But he is buried in near the Roaring Lion,
In Hatzon.
Roaring Lion, the monument there.
Yeah, Jabotinsky was the first
When
man.
we were there, they mentioned him.
I mentioned him, but
No, he was not
it's not very.
So it's one person.
Very nice.
Just a few words. Thank you thank you so much for the introduction and all the preparations that you made, and of course preparing this. It's been with you for the last year, I guess, waiting for the right opportunity. But as tour guides, you need to know things systematically. Okay, when you guide in real life, no one's going to have an exam later, so you can skip the technicalities of presenting things chronologically and everything, but in the tour guide course it's a bit different. So let me just rephrase a part of what you said and put it in chronological order. It's less exciting, but it's better this way to remember. So we are here in a fortress that was built originally by Daher el-Omar and then enlarged and rebuilt by Ahmad al-Jazzar. It means it's from the 18th and the beginning of the 19th century. It's quite late. Before that, there was here a fortress of the Crusaders on the same location. And the fortress of the Crusaders is the one we're going to visit. That's a focal point in the visiting into Akko, and it is a hospitaller fortress. There are hospitalers, Knight Templars, Teutonic Knights, Lazarites, hospitalers. The others had their own locations. Already in the 19th century, the site was turned by the Turkish authorities into a prison, and that's the context of why Baha'u'llah, Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri, Baha'u'llah, he was the Turks in exile. When he spent here about 2 years, and then he was sent, he was under a house arrest north of Akko, on the way to Naharia. There's a place called the Baha'i Garden, or Bahaji. don't confuse that with the Baha'i gardens in Haifa. Even though the Baha'i gardens in Haifa are much greater, more elaborate, much more beautiful, they're only in the second place. Sorry, compared to this site near Akko, because in Haifa, the man who's buried there is the Baba. Okay, he's the forerunner. He's not the main figure. But in here in Akko, in Bahaji, it's the grave of Baha'u'llah. So that is the most important site on earth for the Baha'i movement, not the Baha'i gardens in Haifa. So he was sentenced to imprisonment here for 2 years and then sent to a house arrest, and that's where he also dies. And that's exactly as you said, this is where he loses his son, who falls into a pit. So that happens, that's the first figure you need to remember, 1868, that's Baha'u'llah. The second figure, and if you'd like to know where he was imprisoned, all you need to do is climb up the stairs over there. When I went there, when we passed by, there was a chain blocking the ascent. Maybe they moved it, I don't know why it's there, maybe they were cleaning, but I see people up there, and they don't seem to be working. Maybe they are. No, it's tourists. So if he's there, we're going to go there too. You're going to go there too, and tell me how it was. So when you go up, you enter the site. There's a door telling you that this is the room of Baha'u'llah. It's a holy site. It's only open for the Baha'is when they come here. So that's the door of Baha'u'llah. And why do I mention that? Because that door has a room behind it. And the room has windows. The windows looking over to the sea. When Baha'u'llah was imprisoned, his followers wanted to be in contact with him. And they couldn't, obviously, because he was imprisoned here. So what they did, they bought a house outside, and they were there when he was inside, so they could at least have an eye contact, maybe shout from one side to the other. That's the building I showed you with the blue shutters. If you see that blue shutters, white building, it means it's a Baha'i building. This is the significance. Next to that, there's the room of Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky was the leader of the right-wing Zionism in the beginning of the 20th century, and his ideology led basically to the creation of the Likud movement and the right-wing movement today. So he's the father of the right-wing, traditional traditional right. I feel like Willis Wager.
Right-wing,
Thank you. Willis Wager. For those of you who are not aware of that, this comes from The Life of Brian. Monty Python?
Yeah.
Okay, some of you know that, okay. The more educated. So popular culture is very important. Anyhow, so the right-wing Israeli Zionism is basically following his ideology, at least theoretically. And he led the organization of the Jewish people in Jerusalem in 1920 during the riots that erupted in that year, imprisoned by the British here. Why here? For the same reason most of those who went to the gallows were imprisoned here, because this is mostly a Muslim city, Arab city. If it was in a Jewish city, you'll have riots. In the Muslim city, it's different. So that was one reason. The second reason is that you already have a fortress here you can use. You saw the moat on the way in. Okay, it is heavily protected, so it's easier to use this facility for imprisonment of problematic people, but not only political people, but there were also here hundreds of criminals. So it is basically a criminal jail in general, but there are also political prisoners here. And Jabotinsky was one of them. Some of you mentioned on the Arab side, Palestinian side, Muhammad Jamjoom, Fuad Hijazi, and Atta Zir, they were also imprisoned here, known for
29.
Sorry?
1929.
29, they were
Hebron,
executed.
of course. Hebron, that's
Two of them from Hebron, the other from Safar.
No, what I'm saying is that. Oh, yes, you're right.
Yes,
You're
two
right.
from Hebron.
They both relate to the riots in Safed and in Hebron in 1929, and so they were also imprisoned here. And
Executed.
and later, this is the focal point of our story. In 1947, there were here members of the Etzel underground. Abraham called it Irgun. The Irgun, the organization, is another term used to denote the Etzel. Are you familiar with the underground
yeah.
story?
Yeah.
So there's the Haganah, Etzel, and
Lehi.
Lehi. How many people at the Haganah? Roughly, generally speaking, I'm not looking for exact numbers. 50,000. How many people in the Etzel? 5,000. How many people in the Lehi?
5,300.
How many people at the Lehi?
1,000.
500. 50,000, 5,000, 500. Obviously, these are not accurate numbers, but it's easier to remember this way. So this is the Etzel, the middle one, okay, 5,000 people. And the people, the prisoners were held here, and the British were about to execute them. So they devised a plan to break into the prison. However, they were too late, or to put it the other way around, the British decided to actually execute them before the pre-planned date, and therefore they were simply too late. Yet they decided to get along with the original plan and break into the prison. That happened on May 4th, 1947. There were the plan was to release 41 Jewish underground members. Around 4 in the afternoon, the Etzel members, disguised not as military but as phone technicians that allowed them to bring a ladder with them, and no one suspected. And the only place where they could actually approach the level we're in was on the south side, because there's the hammam. So the hammam is next to the fortress, next to the prison. The prison is over here, and there's a bridge in between. So the idea was to get the ladder, climb up on the bridge, put the explosives, bomb everything, and break in, or actually allow the prisoners to break out. Okay, that was the plan. It was extremely successful. Actually, all the 41 people got out. Only 27 remained outside. Some of them died because the British responded immediately. They were actually on the beach. They didn't take that into account. They were basically on the beach, and when they heard the explosion, they rushed in, and a battle began. So several of the fugitives, 41. The year is 47. The number is 41 prisoners. So some of the fugitives were killed, some of them were caught again and brought back to the prison. At the end, only 27 remained outside. And the major issue was that, why not more than 41? There were many more. There were not enough Israeli families, Jewish families, who were willing to help people from the Etzel, because they were right-wing. So people from the left wing said, let them die. For those of you who are concerned with what's happening in this state today, the tension between left and right, as a historian, I can tell you it's bullshit. We were always like that. Second Temple period, the underground period, it's always like that. We're just like anyone else. Okay, politics destroys everything. Basic human values are destroyed by politics. So there's no surprise about that. That's why I'm not concerned at all. Anyhow, coming back to our story, only 41 could find refuge, but only 27 actually made it outside.
They needed to hide somewhere immediately.
And 4 of the attacking force, 4 members of the Etzel belonging to the attacking force, were actually captured by the Etzel, by the British, brought here, tried and sentenced to death. And they were executed slightly later by the British. However, this time, the Etzel responded. This time the Etzel caught 2 British sergeants, and they said, if you kill our people, we'll kill yours. The British were not impressed. So they executed them, and the Etzel hanged the 2 sergeants. That was a shock. That is the thing that stopped the British executions. And since then, there's no more executions. Anyhow, this story is the famous story of the break into the prison. And at a later stage, I'm going to show you the precise place where they broke into the prison. The precise place. The greatest achievement of the Eiyal operation, breaking into this prison, was the release of hundreds of Arab prisoners. Because when they breached the wall, they couldn't control who's coming out. So those who actually benefited from this operation were the Arab prisoners. And they fled out by the hundreds, and that was basically...
And that were easy to, that could be housed.
Yes.
Sorry, the question is a silly question. My understanding was that the Arabs were in different blocks.
That
and
the what?
The Arab prisoners were in different cell blocks.
Over there.
And they had different times when they were in the yard, right? So how did both the Jews and the Arab prisoners?
Oh, very simple. The Jews are here, the Arabs are there. The breach is over there.
So how did the
Right?
Jews get out?
In between the Jews and the Arabs,
Yes.
there are fences with a lock. You can't open it, but you can blow it up. So that's what he said earlier. They smuggled explosives into the prison, and that's what the Jewish prisoners did. They put it over the lock, bomb it, and then the way out. But as the Arabs were next to the breach, that was their way out to freedom.
Well,
So-
they actually had blueprints, but the Arabs also gave them
You said
information.
that they were too late and,
Was it?
To what?
fourth-
Sorry.
on the 4th of May.
Yes, that's the date
That's the date
of the breaking into the prison.
some of them were executed just before, they were too late with the British.
Yes.
Some of them were
Executed a few days
before, and some of them were executed later. Some of them were actually executed on April 16th.
Gruner
And then the rest were
and then
executed.
Bazani and that story
And then
was
the
on the
rest,
21st of
the
April.
rest were
and then the 4th of
executed
May.
in July.
3 days.
but that was
16th,
the end of it.
21st.
Interestingly enough, there's a film called Exodus. That film was filmed here by Otto Ferminger in the 1950s, and it tells the story of the underground war against the British. Fair enough, it's a good story, interesting. And the director came here to gather some information. He heard about this story about the breaking into the prison, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to include that in my film." So when he spoke with the local authorities at the time, who were not right-wing, to say the least, it's Ben Gurion times, he was instructed to tell in the story, in the film, that it was the Haganah that broke into the prison. The people of the Eiyal, who were still alive, came to him and said, "Listen, this is a lie. Don't do that." And he said, "Okay, I'll wait. We'll wait and see." And obviously, he expected, and indeed, that's exactly what happened. In this film, the story is that the Haganah did that. Okay, so twisting history, lying, creating an artificial alternative history is also part of this story. It shows you the animosity between right and left in this country. And as I said, it didn't start today, right? So what do we see here when we visit the site? Over there, and I'll give you 5 minutes just to go and take a look at it, okay? Because that's not the main part of our tour today. Over there, when you go up, you can see the room of Jabotinsky. You'll immediately identify that because there are plaques with information all over. The room, the locked room of Baha'u'llah. But before you go up there, take a look at the group. To the left of the group, you can see arches. Don't go up yet, just get to the arches, turn to the right, and you can see the reconstructed gallows. Why reconstructed? Because in the time of Ben Gurion, this place was converted into a lunatic asylum so that no one will come and visit the site. Is it an accident? I'm not so sure. But once things changed politically, it was possible to turn it into a museum.
זה לא ידעתי. אשכרה בן גוריון עשה את זה כדי שזה לא יגיע חוקיות.
כנראה הוא לא סיפר לי, אבל אני Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, guys, listen up, listen up.
So you're saying the
Now
tour
it's
programs that used to be
10:20, actually 2016, I think, 2015, right? I'm 5 minutes ahead. 10:15. Let's take 5 minutes, okay, quickly. Just go up and see, okay? No need to spend more time here because the
Someone's footprint is here. What is this?
I think these two.
These two.
I think. I am not sure this is your wife. You can ask.
This is for how long? How do you know about that? What's your source? What's your source?
Yes, and please, if you can leave my book. Yes. I can open it, but you cannot go inside.
مين كان هو؟
مش مكتوب. هدول
They are coming from Iran. I'm from Finland. But the group be behind pilgrims coming from around the world.
That's Jabo. Jabotinsky, Jabo.
Okay, I think your time is.
I think our time is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes. Please take a break because this time is for That's why I put the chain. Open the chain and protect.
ما لها عصبت